Last speaker today is Dr. Diane Helliker, and I'm a little familiar with her research, and she does some fascinating work on doing life stories, especially to those in long-term care facilities. Um, Dr. Helliker is a professor at the School of Nursing, and her primary focus is on gerontology mixed with methodology and qualitative research. She does extensive teaching and has as well as extensive experience in a variety of settings, including medical, surgical, nursing, orthopedic nursing, psychiatric nursing, and community and home health nursing. Our clinical practice involved roles of the staff nurse, head nurse, supervisor, and regional director.
Okay, I'm Diane Helliker, and we can kind of begin. Very grateful and for the opportunity to talk to you today about transitions and moving to another residence in our later years. And I say our because we're all going to take part in this conversation at some time, either with our relatives or our children with us. And so it's an interesting conversation. And I'd like to begin by sharing some thoughts about what moving means. And then I'd like to share the perspectives and stories of those who have moved to independent living facilities, retirement homes, assisted living facilities, and skilled nursing homes. Based on the several studies that I've done talking to these individuals, in which the voices of the elders and their caregivers were heard. And finally, I'd like to share some models that exemplify innovative approaches to long-term care and take into account the meaning of moving and transitioning, along with some suggestions and strategies that have helped elders, their families, the staff, the administration. So I'll be doing reading to make sure that I do stay within the time frame, though. It kind of just moves it along better. Let's see, here we go. Good. These are just some of the studies that I'm involved in right now, as well as I've finished others. I work with story quite a bit. I work with all kinds of types of research, mixed methodologies. Very interested in the relationship between nurse aides and the residents for whom they care in long-term care. The lived experience of early days of transitioning into assisted living, into skilled care facilities. I have followed elders over a period of 3 months. Repeated interviews. What is it like? What is it like moving here? Tell me about it. They're the experts. It's not going to be in a textbook. And then another study I'm involved with is looking at and trying to ameliorate the stress in the transition to assisted living facilities. Tremendous amounts of stress in these elders. And again, the only way we're going to be able to help is by asking them, by going to them. And so that's what I study. That's what I study. If you'll join me for a moment as we consider the meaning of home, and please think about your own home. A place where children have been raised, gardens grown, events celebrated, birthdays, bringing home the new baby, graduations, Thanksgiving, Christmas, anniversaries, Super Bowl Sunday, a place for family gatherings, a place of rituals, coffee clutches, drinks with friends, neighbors, breakfast after church. Our treasures are housed in this museum of life history. Our possessions, our photos, special linens, quilts, military medals, old chairs once belonging to a great-great-grandmother. She sat on that chair every day, and now it's in your home. And it will be passed on. And the outside is just as important, starting with the door, the threshold, all that entered and left over the years. The windows, a place of watching. the porch, the space between home and community, a place of connections between the two. Keeping an eye on the neighbor's house, or always kind of looking around, seeing what the neighbors are doing. Your area of surveillance. We know what windows to look through when we want to see certain things. We know, and this is mostly for the elders, of course, in my hometown in New York, we know every bus route by heart, and we even know better the bus driver. We know the best food store, the church, the pastor. We know important phone numbers and the best time to call family. And they know the best times to call us, so as not to interrupt perhaps a favorite TV program. My mother watched Guiding Light for 30 years. You never call during Guiding Light. There are phone visits that we have. How we keep in touch with children and friends who leave the town. Favorite pets. We remember favorite trees. We feel safe there. If we lose our balance or have a dizzy spell, we know which wall or piece of furniture is within easy reach. Graham Rolls, who is a human geographer, calls this body awareness, automatic pilot. We know just how to work the faucets, so no matter how old they get, we know how to work them. We have a list of to-dos, and that we'll get to them in time, someday. People there know us, our quirks, our preferences, what's important to us and what matters to us, at home and in our neighborhoods. And we know them, our homes. All the homes we've ever lived in have a history. Our history. Our homes are intertwined with our very identity. We are our homes. We are our possessions, and we are our memories. Okay? So, when we're moving from home, this is how some have defined home. A schema of relationships that brings order, integrity, and meaning to experience. A sacred place. My favorite, good friends, good neighbors, and memories. A repository of meaning and memories. A series of connections between person and their world. A living museum where our treasures are displayed. Okay? Home is our continuity between past, present, and future. And hopefully our children will have it next. It will be our legacy to them. Let me see, where am I? So, but eventually, in time, no matter where we live, what home we are in, as we become older, elders may experience a kind of interruption in our everyday activities, ever so slowly over time, as we all grow. We become a little bit more, maybe increasingly short of breath. So climbing stairs gets a bit tougher, so perhaps we don't use the upstairs anymore. We're careful with money, so we may not heat or cool the upstairs either. We may not see as well, so we may not read as much or watch TV. We may not hear as well, so we may feel a little more isolated. The house is deteriorating too. But because many elders in their 80s don't anticipate a very long lifespan, spending money on fixing up the place just doesn't seem warranted. Even the neighborhood is changing. It's getting older too. Different neighbors. The elder may not feel as safe anymore. All in all, everything is becoming a little bit more vulnerable. And eventually, we will all be faced with some options, perhaps only two. One, stay in the home. Have the kids finally repair what must be repaired. Have home health go in. Have a close by relative keep an eye on you. Or change residence. Eventually, the relocation conversation may be forced on all of us. This conversation is most complex with many dimensions, the least of which is what, again, Graham Rolls called the experiential cost cost of relocation. The subjective meaning of the process is very, very complex. Home is much more than a functional environment, a place where we do our activities of daily living. Right? It's a place that imparts our identity, a sense of being known, security, and a sense of belonging. And so, depending on how much assistance we need, we're moving from home now to where? Could be independent living. We could maybe move from that 3,000 square foot house to that 800 square foot apartment. What do you take with you? What do you leave? What do you sell? When I was moving from my very large house to my townhome, my kids didn't want the special things that I thought were special. So off they went to a garage sale. Didn't have any room for them. Some things they wanted, some things they didn't. An apartment, a small home, a retirement place, perhaps a small home or co-housing, which is becoming more popular, the greenhouse project, which I'll mention later, small group homes, assisted living residence or a skilled nursing facility, rehab. It all depends on the level of support we need. And the move is by no means automatically one way. There is considerable back and forth dynamic movement depending on health status. You may go to an assisted living facility or residence. You may fall, fracture an arm, move to a rehab unit in a nursing home, then go back to the assisted living, and then maybe go back to an independent living apartment. So it's ever moving, ever fluctuating. And who makes those decisions? Transition means to go across. A man by the name of Ty Hurst in 1957 started to study transition. He was studying people in retirement, migration, and in disaster. And he found some common themes during these transitions. He said, there's a disturbance of bodily function, mood, and cognition, symptoms of psychological distress, altered time perspective. Individuals may experience a disruption in routine, emotional upheaval, breakdown, and a crisis in meaning. So it's very interesting. Now, we've all experienced transitions. You know? We all graduated, high school, college, moved out of our parents' house, transition, became new mothers or new fathers, transition, retired. There are so many transitions in our lives, right? Transitions from home are transitions in meaning. That was 1957. Then we didn't hear very much for a while until, oops, wrong one, here we go, until the 1970s. Then the lifespan development movement came along, and Parks, who really studied more of bereavement situations and transitions, said that a transition is a way to understand the process of adjustment following the death of a significant other. One must develop new assumptions and skills to cope with a new, altered life space. One is forced to give up how one views the world and his or her place in it. You know? This perspective really speaks to the underlying assumption that growth and change are embedded in who we are as human beings, and that we do have the capacity for growth and change. It's continuous. It's continuous. We went further, and now in the late 70s, they said, well, transition can be seen as a series of life course markers. Transitions moving from one stage or event in life to another, with varying degrees of stability, instability, regained stability. Okay? And of course, the emphasis always being on the restoration of equilibrium. The 1990s. The humanist perspective comes in, and the most wonderful that I just think it's a wonderful new discipline of human geography. Graham Rolls, Malcolm Cutchin, human geographers who are helping us see the blending of person and the environment. Malcolm Cutchin on our own faculty for a while longer anyway. He's moving on to bigger and better things, but his study involved assisted living facilities and how folks integrated themselves with this new place. And he's looking at how do they feel at home? When do they say, or do they ever say they feel at home? The meaning of place, according to Rolls and Robdo, they speak of physical intimacy. And that's, again, navigating around your house. You know every piece of furniture, every wall. I've often watched my mother where she just kind of tripped a little and knew exactly where that wall was or that chair. Never moved a stick of furniture. Everything was just the way she wanted it. Social immersion. We know that there's meaning now in these places, social meaning. We act certain ways when we're in our local churches, when we're at the mall, when we're with our neighbors. Meaning. Everything is embedded. Home as place is imbued with meaning. It is a lived experience. It is a lived space. And there is continuity of person and environment. We are persons embedded with personal meaning, history, place, and we are all storied people. And when we move, our story moves with us. In some of my studies, I'm going to tell you what elders say. Moving into independent living, what do they say? Well, I'll miss my big tree and my large garden. The children are close by and they visit a lot. The men get together for coffee, just the men, I like that. There are activities for newcomers to make us feel welcome, okay? That's living, they do pretty well, especially if it's a husband and wife team. What do they say when they move into an assisted living facility? So far, everything's been nice. Met a lot of nice people. Have a little trouble being by myself. I'm having some trouble. There's no kitchen. I hope I fit in here. I'm used to living alone. It's breaking my heart not to go back to my apartment. I had it just the way I wanted it. I was expecting it to be more like home. I don't have friends among the residents. My friends are among the people who take care of me. Okay? Need a little bit more assistance. A little bit more assistance. And what about those who go into skilled care? In the first month, we heard stories like this. I want to go back to my apartment. It's a house full of memories. These are direct quotes. You don't know what it's like. You lose your identity for being able to do what you want to do when you want to do it. They don't know my meaning. The woman cried again and again. They don't know my meaning. They weren't known. If they were still there at 2 months and 3 months, these are the stories they told. In their words, learning the ropes and getting settled. Nobody tells you anything. They are, meaning the staff. They're out there and I'm in here. They have rules. Can't do this, you can't do that. People change things around. I don't know where they put things. These are beginning to be the surviving elders. So they go out and they start to learn the ropes. And those who were still there at 4 months, they say, it isn't home. I need to be in a place like this, though. This is my place. We have to play the cards we're dealt. What was won't be again. I've met a lot of people here. They treat you right. You got to make the best of it. The survivors. This was a beautiful multi-million-dollar facility. And when I was there, I did a lot of observing. And very unfortunately, at the time, it has changed since. I never saw one nurse aide cross the threshold of a patient's room, a resident's room. Not once. They hired someone from the outside to become the bath aide. I never saw a nurse aide touch a resident. Multi-million-dollars. Nice chandeliers, though. They were nice. Good chandeliers. So what makes for a successful move? Let's see what the nurse aides say in some of the local nursing homes here. Here's a nurse aide. She says, they're proud of us and our achievements. They're meaning the residents. just like we're proud of them and theirs. I like it when we talk about ourselves. I was telling Mrs. Green about my boyfriend. She said, "You need to get rid of him. He is just bad." I said, "Well, okay," and I did. After we were broken up, about 3 days on my break, I slipped into Mrs. Green's room and I told her, "Now I have a new boyfriend. He's sweet." And I had Mrs. Green meet him because I knew she'd want to meet him. Now we begin to see stories of friendships, of relationships, of give and take between nurse aides specifically who spend over 80% of their day with the residents and with the residents for whom they care. What happens in one of our other nursing homes when someone moves in? I go in, she says, this is a nurse aide, and I sit down, which is what I do with all my new residents. I go in and introduce myself, and I don't ask them what's wrong with you or something personal like that. But what I do is sit back and I try to realize what they can do, what they can't, if they like a lot of attention, not too much attention, because some people are angry. So you kind of gradually get to know them. So with Mrs. Shea, I could tell she was a little scared. I told her I was the permanent, that's supposed to be CNA in the mornings. "I know you're scared being here. It's a strange place. I'd like to be your friend. I'd like to get to know you," she said. The resident said, "There's not much to know about me." And I said, "Well, I'll be a good judge to that. You know, as the days go by, I really like you just the way you are." She kind of laughed, and so I gradually got to know her. These two are exceptionally good friends today. Exceptionally good friends. And what do the residents say about the nurse aides they come to know? We do just like sisters. Mostly when you get sisters together, they got kids and grandkids and family. We talk family. You feel like a family member here. I like it here. The commonalities in the stories I've collected, and there are many stories I've collected now, are about relationships, friendships, recreating family. There is one resident in one of the nursing homes that I do my research in, and she's got pictures of family members on her bureau. Not her family, her nurse aide's family. Choices, belongings, their possessions, caring for and being cared about. You know, we forget that one of the ways that we're human is that we're able to care for as well as receive care. In a lot of facilities, when someone moves in, the first thing that's taken away from them is the right to care for something. It's taken away. They become inhuman. Being known. I hear stories about elders moving, recreating home and family, reciprocity. Humor, lots of teasing back and forth, kidding, joking back and forth. I hear stories of welcoming and inviting and hospitality. I hear stories from families about nurse aides. One nurse aide here in Galveston was asked when the resident died, she was asked to give the eulogy, and she did. This is invisible practices of nurse aides that we just don't have a clue. The poorest paid, unbelievable. I'm writing a book called Best Practices of Nurse Aides. I asked them how they learn what they do. And did they get it in school or in certification when they got certified, and they just laugh? No, they help each other. So, successful transitioning, that blend of self and environment, it's called place integration strategies in our literature. How do we create new meanings and values? Place integration is never complete. We need to understand the meanings, the problems from the perspective of the elder and the family. Understand where in local context the fracture exists. What must it be like to leave home and during that initial phase of turmoil become what might feel like, and what in their words, becoming homeless? That fracture. At what point do the old stories about how we used to live at home no longer work? And we need to start recreating new stories, new families, new home, not forgetting what's there, bringing that, but those old stories sometimes just don't always work. One of the things we must do when someone first moves into either independent living, assisted living, nursing homes, we must allow them time to grieve the loss of their home. And that may take a while. Explore meaning and value of actions that resolve or address these areas. What I do in my work primarily is listen. Listen to the story. Transitional strategies. Create an attractive destination environment, provision of support to elder and family, promotion of an ongoing sense of continuity with past environments. I know some nursing homes and assisted living facilities where they'll take and invite the elder to come in their car and take some drives through the old neighborhood, the old house, see what's happening, you know. And if they're too far away, at least sit and think about and talk about the old home, you know, because it's in their memory. Ensure a place in which the elder's voice is amplified and heard. Resident councils are very popular. Resident newsletters are very popular. How can we help? I have one nurse aide in my study. When I first met him, he startled me a bit. He's a very large fellow with tattoos, huge muscles. And all I could think of, this is terrible, all I could think of when he said he wanted to be part of my study was he's probably been in prison and they don't do background checks like they should. And oh my God, why does he want to be in the study? He has turned my life around. He is an incredible, incredible nurse aide. And one day, he was sitting with this isn't a nursing home, skilled facility, not a lot of money, kind of one of the poorer ones. And he was sitting in the dining room talking to one of the residents one day. And he said he was feeling homesick himself. He was just feeling kind of down. And so he was talking to this resident, and they come to find out they were both from Louisiana, and they both knew which neighborhood they were from. And she goes and she says, and they started talking about foods and different, things they liked. And she was telling him, she says, you know what I really miss, she says, is fried bologna sandwiches and picnics. We used to have picnics. True story. The next day, Johnny came in with a fried bologna sandwich and wheeled her out to the park bench, and they sat and they had a picnic. Nurse aides do this all the time. They bring in clothes from home when they see that a resident needs clothes. It's amazing. It's amazing. Aging in place. This is helpful, I think, because the aging in place that has the independent living, the assisted living, and the nursing homes, it makes the transitions a little bit easier. Because what we found was, and this, when someone gets hurt and they fall or something in the independent living apartment and they move to rehab in the skilled facility, their friends come to visit. And they're encouraged to do so. And so that's kind of nice. So if your friends can visit you back and forth, that's a good thing. And so over time, layer upon layer of new meanings are co-created. There's new neighborhoods, new possibilities emerge. And there's an ongoing role for family and friends. We can make a difference. One of the things I talk about, let me just make sure there it is. I talk to people in nursing homes and assisted living on how to be a family member. I've been in so many nursing homes for so many hours, and sometimes I see a new resident come in and the family literally crucify nurse aides, nurses, LVNs, RNs, without even talking to them, because they're very upset themselves. There may be guilt, there may be anger. They see things on TV about nursing homes they don't want to see, they don't want to believe. And so I teach them how to be family members, and how to be a resident. In other words, when you come in and your mom her hair is kind of really pretty that day, to just ask who did it and say thank you. Just so many nice things you can do. If it's a resident, I say to them, and this happens a lot. This is the other thing, that things happen so much that unless you hang around nursing homes for a long time, you don't see these things. A resident could say, when a nurse aide is talking to you about her children, just say, come on, bring your kids over one day. I'd like to meet them. And they do. On their days off, when they're passing by, they bring the little ones in. The little ones know their grandma. It's wonderful. It's amazing. Think about language. Now there's a whole piece that's growing of the difference between institutional language and home language in nursing homes. Is it a ward, a unit, a wing, or should it be called a hall or a neighborhood? Is it a nutrition station or a pantry? Is it a clothing protector or a bib, or a napkin or smock? Right? Therapy room or fitness center or gym? Our language tells a lot of how people are looked upon. And in one of my talks to elders in nursing homes, it was an assisted living facility. I said, should it be called a resident council or a homeowners association? And they all clapped. They wanted, because it's very expensive to live in some assisted living facilities. Yeah, it should be called a homeowners association. They like that. So it's always interesting to think about those kinds of things as well. Let me see. One of the things I tell family members that works beautifully, I've done it myself with my mom, is when you go in, tell the staff about your mom. She used to be a nurse. And what I did with my mom, she was, earlier this year, she was in the hospital. And starting right from the hospital, I had my family, we all gathered in New York, and we put a storyboard together. And wherever she went, we brought the storyboard. And it is amazing how that starts the conversation. People will go directly to the storyboard. Nurse aides, nurses, physicians, social workers. It's wonderful. Everybody. Hey, this is your kid? This is, and my mom loved that. My mom loved that. So, let's see. Some suggestions. Again, storyboarding, story sharing. We encourage nurse aides and other staff to share their story, not just listen to the story of the resident, share their story. Residents are hungry for the story. And we do stories through many different, through the expressive arts, through poetry, through theater, the resident newspaper, the college courses. The study I'm doing with Vince Serapina is in assisted living, and what we're gonna do is hook up new residents in assisted living with peer coaches who will be with them for 3 months, the first 3 months, and just sort of help them learn the ropes. Take those conclusions on those themes I found from my studies and kind of just work with the peer coaches who will be folks who are in there, in the assisted living residents, who've been there for at least 6 months and who want to volunteer. And then, of course, there's Voices Day. Voices Day, we're beginning for the first time this winter. And what we're going to do is bring together in the same room aides, nurses, everybody, housekeeping, dietitians, nutrition workers. And we're going to start sharing stories among ourselves, because nurse aides don't know what it's like to be a DON. And the DON really doesn't know what it's like to be a nurse aide. And so as we begin to share stories, we believe, we've seen this happen in education in nursing schools, as the increased understanding of each one's role emerges, things change all by themselves. So we're going to try that in the nursing home population. Let me talk about models of care. There. I don't know how many of you are familiar with these, but I just thought these are remember everything, the key to all these kinds of care and the transition is how quickly can you form relationships wherever you go. You know, someone once told me, and I really believe that if everybody had one really good friend, we wouldn't need psychiatrists. I really believe that. So, and I see that with elders, just one person. It doesn't have to be clingy, just somebody. So the Eden alternative, and remember the piece that I said about being cared for and caring for? The Eden alternative, of course, was started by Bill Thomas in New York. It's elder-centered care where a human habitat is created. We have one in the area at South Shore Harbor, in Harborview, in League City. And this is where everyone can bring in their own pets. You know, you bring in your dog or your cat, your goldfish, your bird, and they can stay with you. And you care for them, and you walk them, and you feed them. And there's much more to the philosophy of the Eden alternative because there are committees about who takes care of the animals, and there are all these committees. And if you are the janitor, you can be the chair of a committee. On the committee could be the DON, a physician, and it's sort of like a team approach, a relational approach. It's very, very impressive. Bill Thomas talks of the 3 plagues of long-term care, right? Loneliness, helplessness, and boredom. And so with this human habitat, he said, environment with unexpected and unpredictable interactions, like when you have animals, that's the antidote to boredom. He said that life in his homes revolves around close and continuing contact with plants, animals, and children. No such thing as plastic plants in his place. Always real life plants, real gardens, lots of kids. And he says loving companionship is the antidote for loneliness. Elder-centered community care creates the opportunity to give as well as receive care. And this is the antidote to helplessness. Decision-making is in the hands of elders and those closest to them. It's really, it's an amazing, I had the opportunity to visit several Eden alternative homes throughout the state of Texas. It's incredible. People are talking to each other, residents are talking to each other, they're yelling at each other, they're showing each other their animals. I was there very, very early one morning in New Braunfels at one of the homes. It was like 7 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. Everybody was out walking their dogs. I've never seen people in nursing homes get more exercise. It's wonderful. And it's just amazing. It is just amazing. He also developed thereafter, oh yeah.
What model of service provision is used there? Is it multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, or transdisciplinary?
It is so resident-centered that it's the resident who controls everything and the family. So it's all working as a team. It's all working as a team. Everybody's at the table.
Do people
Go ahead.
On the medical side of it, do they exchange roles? In other words, would you have a nurse working on OT goals, a PT
No.
working on speech goals? So
No.
it's still interdisciplinary.
Still has that. Yeah, it still has the discipline.
Do you use animals in therapy?
Absolutely. In fact, when I was at the New Braunfels home, I was trying to listen to this administrator because she was explaining the philosophy to me. And in the background was this constant screaming. Ah! You know, the scream in nursing homes, it just doesn't let up. And you're trying to pay attention to someone. And meanwhile, we were in a room where they had one of these big things covered with carpet with a bunch of kittens on it. Well, I'm hearing this screaming, I'm trying to listen, and all of a sudden this nurse aide runs in and says, excuse me, and takes a kitten and runs out again. So I stopped the conversation, I said, excuse me, I'm going to follow her. So I followed her, and she went right to the screaming individual, and all she did was take the kitten and put him on the lap of the individual, who immediately calm down, pet the cat, and an individual who has very rarely, if ever spoken, said, "I love you," and calmed right down. The animals are tools. They're interventions. And the nurse aides and everybody use them. And it's wonderful. It is just incredible. The other thing, of course, everyone asks is, what if somebody goes into one of those and they like their dog, they want their dog, but they hate cats? And of course, the idea there is very simple. They give these individuals a water gun. And the minute the cat walks into your room, you get them once, and those cats know they won't come back in again. So it's kind of neat. So they wipe up the water. But it's like lots of fun, lots of creative stuff to do. Then he started the Greenhouse Project. Now the Greenhouse Project, these are small intentional communities where 8 to 10 elders live in small homes. Each one has their own bath and their own bedroom. And then there's a community dining room and community kitchen. And the home itself is located in an already established neighborhood. Okay? And he's trying to decentralize long-term care. And these homes have to be built special, obviously. But the first one was in Mississippi, and that's beginning to spread out more and more now, too. So it's the Greenhouse Project. The Greenhouse Project is interesting because each home has a shabazz. A shabazz is an elder assistant. These are CNAs with advanced education. They are the direct care provider. They prepare the meals. They maintain the home. They are coached by a guide who is the administrator off-site, and they are advised by a sage who is a community dwelling elder in the neighborhood. So do you feel that relationship, so this is interesting. It's just more and more becoming more interesting. All of these, they become very interesting. My favorite is the Ideal Nursing Home. Eric Hayter started this in, I guess it was 98. He is the founder. 1991. Jeez.
How do you spell his name?
H-A-I-D-E-R. Eric Hayter. Now, Eric was he was an administrator in a nursing home, and he had a baccalaureate degree. That's his degree, baccalaureate. And I thought, oh, well, what is he going to say about this ideal nursing home? Well, what he used to do, he says he used to just sit back and watch people in the dining room, and people who didn't want to go there because it was too loud, and they didn't want to wait for their meals. And he saw levels of malnutrition, weight loss, all the things you see in nursing homes, loss of appetite. And then he went one night with his family to this restaurant buffet. And he just was talking to the guy in the restaurant. He says, well, how many people you feed here a night? And the guy said 300. And he said, how do you do that? And he said, well, they come, you eat when they, and they kind of went through it. And he says, well, why don't we have a buffet type style in the nursing home? He went back to his nursing home. Every wing of his nursing homes are buffet. Everyone chooses only what they want to eat, no matter what level they are. When you move into his nursing home, by the way, there's a 3-year waiting list. When you move in, you go to your room, and he'll say, well, what color do you want the walls? And now other nursing homes do this. And he says, well, they'll give them colors or something. And he'll say, no, wait. You and me, let's go to Walmart. You pick it out. He takes the people to Walmart. They pick it out, comes back, and he has his workmen fix it up just as they want it. He said that no matter what any resident wants, the answer can never be no for his staff. It's always, how can I do this? How can I do this? There are open dining hours, not you must eat at 7 in the morning. No such thing in his place. He's got he built a little outdoor fishing pond. Actually, it's pretty big now, because some of his residents like to go fishing. They didn't like bingo. They didn't want to do the word games. And so somebody in the audience, when he was speaking, said, okay, well, what if everybody in the whole nursing home wants to go fishing that day? And he said it happened. And so they've got this, you've got the van, And the van just kept making trips out, picked up more people. The whole pond was all, everybody was sitting in a chair and they were all fishing. And they fished until they didn't want to fish anymore. He empowers people. He believes that you must develop relationships. If you work for him, you must develop friendships with the residents, or don't bother working for him. He is probably the most humane, in this business, the most humane I've ever seen. His people, his staff must have a positive attitude, dependability, good organizational skills. They must role model. It is person-centered care. And he's incredible. Just a funny story. One thing, people knew about his thing about never say no to a resident. So one of the older residents, male residents, said, I want a wet t-shirt contest. And so he said, okay. So he thought about it. So the next day, he got a whole bunch of t-shirts and he hung them on the fence outside and he watered them down. And he said, there you go. But he does this all that. He does stuff like this, just this out-of-the-box thinking. That is great.
What was it? Oh, how can we measure these outcomes and report them? Because that's-
Marilyn Rantz. She's one of our nursing researchers in long-term care. R-A-N-T-Z. Marilyn Rantz. This ideal nursing home is so phenomenal. That she just wrote a book evaluating it. I'm trying to find the book. I can't find the book. I know she did it. I double checked with Tim Porter O'Grady when he was here recently, because he knows her too. We know she wrote the book. We're just trying to get it. I can't find it on Amazon.com. So I'm looking for it. She actually wrote an entire book about it.
Is this a nursing home or assisted living?
Nursing home. Even those who were in.
Imagine our nursing home patients.
I know.
They can't even fall in line. They can't do this.
It's amazing when you treat them as human beings. And his nursing home has never had one Medicare or Medicaid, had not one deficiency, ever. No weight loss. Because when people, in the audience that day were all these administrators saying, what do you mean buffet? You have to have so much protein, and you have to have so much this, and he said, let them choose. You have a spoonful of ham salad, a spoonful of egg salad. What am I hooked on? And they were gaining weight. Just let them eat what they want to eat. He literally is amazing, and it's all Medicare, Medicaid. And
Does he have additional funding?
no. Oh, no. Also, to work for him, to work for him is also, there's a waiting list of aides who want to work for him, because it's that unbelievable.
They must have a good selection criteria for admission.
For admission.
He said even if they can't do very much, he has somebody wheel them down with a tray, and he says, and people help each other. Would you like to try that?
Feed themselves. Some of them, just are not able to, So I would
I know.
like to see one of this.
That's why I want to see the book. I want to see Marilyn Rantz's book, because I'm sure she's outcome oriented. Huh? Missouri, Bethany, Missouri. But there's more and more, because he's going to different nursing homes throughout the country, and he's starting the ideal nursing home concept. It's in fact Crestview Home, Inc., Bethany, Missouri. Totally transformed it into a home-like setting.
But he just has this one.
No, he's got several of them. That's the one he started at. So it just kind of,
It would be nice if we didn't think that would be such a
I know,
usual.
isn't that amazing? But people in the audience were like this. They were saying the same thing. Now, Eden Alternative, we know we have outcome measures. Less psychotropics, less mortality. So we know that Eden is measuring. But ideal.
Do we know what the Eden costs are?
Huh?
Do we know what the Eden costs are?
No, I don't know. But I've got,
Because that would be the argument that people would use against trying to walk in this direction. It's like, oh yeah, it's great, but it costs too much money.
well, they all have their own vet on board. It's a consulting vet. That they have. Everybody chips in to clean the kitty litter and stuff like that. I know that. I do remember one thing from Eden, that Thomas said that the minute you start Eden, expect 30% of your nurse aides to walk out. And they do. Not doing that, not paid for that, but that's okay. That's what he says. And that's what happened at Harborview.
Yeah, Harborview
they
has
walked
a very a stricter criteria than the other nursing homes in the area.
Yeah.
Also, some of their patients are not necessarily as active as, there are certain patients that can't really do everything.
In fact, I was just at Harborview again the other day, and there's being Edenized, and then there's being Edenized.
Yeah.
The one in New Brunswick is much more Edenized than this one, than Harborview. Harborview's got a few animals.
I think the original in New York of
Yeah.
what's his name?
Bill Thomas? Yeah.
Is just wonderful
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's like a village,
The best one I've seen, it's in New Brunswick. The nursing home is called Eden, not after Eden Alternative, but the name of the nursing home is called Eden. You got to see that one.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So it's just, these are great models. They're all relational models, all relational. Now, the Pioneer Network, I don't know have you heard of the Pioneer Network? It's a grassroots network started by social workers, nurses, physicians, all wanting to make life better for nursing home residents and for all our aged in this country. And so it was about 1997, again, New York. They started it in Rochester. They called 33 people together, and they said, how are we going to, this country's we've got to honor our elders. We have to honor the relationship in nursing homes. We have all these things. And what I'm going to give you now also, before I leave, are the websites, because you got to see the websites. The only website I don't have is Eric Hayter's, but I have the other websites here. But the Pioneer Network, in fact, they're going to have 4 institutes this year across the country to go and see how to start places like Eden Alternative, places like the Greenhouse Project, the Ideal Nursing Home, how to change the culture in our nursing homes, because that's what it's going to take. I'm a consultant in nursing homes. You got to change the whole culture. It's not going to work otherwise. You got to get everybody involved. It's got to be very relational. And that's the whole thing behind the Pioneer Network. Now, one of the greatest people I know in the Pioneer Network is Carter Caitlett Williams. She's a social worker. She's quite elderly now, but she's amazing. And she says it's the heart of long-term care is relationship. And I got to read this to you as an ending for this because I think it's wonderful. I don't know if you have heard of Henry Nouwen. He's a philosopher, psychologist, and a priest who has passed away, but he illuminated life for so many and lived his last years as helper and friend in a group home for people facing the most severe functional challenges. This is Carter Williams speaking. Nouwen believed that relationships, or the lack of them, could be a matter of life and death for human beings. He makes his point by focusing on times of separation. When someone returns from a journey or returns from the hospital, that person needs to know that someone is waiting for him or her. Nouwen writes in his book, The Wounded Healer, "No man can stay alive when nobody is waiting for him. Everyone who returns from a long and difficult trip is looking for someone waiting for him. Everyone wants to tell his story and share his moments of pain and exhilaration with someone waiting for him to come back. A man can keep his sanity and can stay alive as long as there is at least one person who is waiting for him." And then Caitlett says, "I hope for the day when everyone who lives in any long-term care situation knows there is someone waiting for him or her each morning after the journey of sleep one takes each night. And I yearn for the day when each staff person, most especially CNAs, know that there are people who are waiting for a morning greeting, interested in learning how the CNA fared in the hours they were apart. And if either goes on a journey or becomes ill or is set apart in the hospital or in any other way, Each needs to know that someone is waiting. Let us build relationships and let us wait for one another, understanding that it is this that brings meaning to life, and it is this that makes nursing homes places for living rather than for declining and dying. Simply stated, it is a matter of life and death. I'm going to go to Oregon in July, and I'm going to meet with this group because I think they've got the answer. And I hope to bring it back and bring it into my work in nursing homes. Nurse aides get it. I have to make sure the rest of the home gets it. Thank you. That's all I got this time.